Hi, everyone. Of you. Number 60 today. But let's do some of this first, because the topic is exposition, and I have more to say than I wrote. So like exposition, what I mean is descriptions of characters and the setting that those characters inhabit, context, everything that the reader or the viewer, the audience, everything the audience would need to know for that story to work. And if or you're writing fiction or something, and you want your story to work, right, with an audience, how you handle exposition matters, right? If you want your readers, let's say, to connect with your characters is like super important. Because think about the people that you enjoy in real life, the people whose company you appreciate, the phone calls you answer. None of those people, I mean, I hope none of those people just pummel you with uninterruptible monologues. YouTube isn't real life. That's what you expect here. But like in real life, you expect that from somebody who's in like a pyramid scheme and they're trying to, pressure you into purchasing their merchandise. Or it's like telemarketers, like people who have all the charm of a telemarketer, but you don't answer those calls. Those are not friends you invite into your home and phone calls that you answer. So again, if you're writing fiction and you want your characters to be likable, you got to consider how you are relaying all the necessary information. There's so many ways to do it badly. It's not just, pyramid schemes. Every genre has its own cliches, its own bad ways of disclosing information. It's like heists. Like I'm like so sick of heists, and so that's why they're coming up. Nearly every heist has this scene where one character like turns and looks at another character and says, "Tell me again why we can't." Like whatever, like just break into the vault or whatever. It's like that every time. And then sometimes some character will just, without provocation, will just burst into the monologue and like, let me tell you, why this is impossible. You can never do this. You will never succeed. This will never be achieved by anyone ever. So that way, right, they give every single detail, every piece of information the viewer needs to know to understand how impossible this is and how high these stakes are. Man, I hate that scene. It's in pretty much all of them. My favorite, I have one that I like, and my one of one that I like didn't do that really. Like, at least I don't remember that like heavy-handed, heavy forearmed and elbowed and just body weight, exposition. And that is the Pierce Brosnan, what is it, the Thomas Crown Affair, Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. I think it came out like late 90s, maybe 2000, somewhere around there. Not the original one came out a long time ago, and it's like, okay. But the remake of Thomas Crown Affair, oh, it's so good. And they're just, it's like head and shoulders and like nipples and navel and other anatomy above, I would say, things like Ocean's 11. But like they didn't do that. This is like really crude, kind of like crass, disclosure that like Ocean's 11. I think that's the reason everybody does it, is that one did. But it's just lazy. It's just lazy to do that. And lazy writing is never good writing. Let's get back to the good. I've been talking about bad exposition. Let's talk about the goods. I would say the best example I can think of in the moment, maybe not the best of all time, but the best example I can think of in the moment would be The Great Gatsby. There's so much information the reader needs to know. The characters, the backstory, the setting. There's so much context the reader needs to know. And the way that Fitzgerald did it is he had Nick Carraway be the narrator. It's so perfect. It works. There's never a moment of excessive info dumping. It's so perfect. You know everything you need to know. I feel like that should be the basis of comparison of really all stories, all media, fantasy and whatever. So like for fantasy, I would say Harry Potter's pretty good. There's this clueless character, and he seeks information. He wants to know his past and who he is and who his parents were and about his parents and this world he finds himself. He's just looking for information, and Rowling just gives these morsels along the way. It's just like a slow drip, kind of backstory, and you could go on this journey of discovery with him. It totally works. I mean, it's not Fitzgerald, but it works. It's really good. I would say there's a celebrated movie and from a novel or Crichton, Jurassic Park, and people talk about how good that is. And I don't agree. It's not terrible. Everyone knows the scene I'm talking about. That like tutorial video, like the bad cartoon that everybody watches a bad cartoon when they arrive at the park. It explains everything you need to know for the movie to work. That just feels like it's cheating. It's clever, it works, but it feels like it's cheating. In that same category, I would put Star Wars. Like all of them, you know, that intro scene where there's that diagonally scrolling block of prose that's just like, I mean, it's just gimmicky and boring, and it's saved by John Williams. John Williams also did Jurassic Park. Okay, this is all I'm talking about bad examples. Let's get back to the good. We only gave, I think, two good examples of Harry Potter too. Princess Bride. Oh, that's good. It's short. The book is, in the book, there's that prologue that kind of is creepy. But in the movie and in the book after that initial prologue, it's so perfectly done. I mean, Terminator is good, but who cares? DuckTales, I would say DuckTales is in the canon of for cartoons, effective exposition, not every single episode, but a lot of them. There's a bunch of characters, there's a quest that needs to happen, there's locations, there's bad guys, everything needs to be described as they go, and yeah, like 22 minutes to do it, and they did a pretty good job. I think for a kid show, I think they did a pretty good job. But I think the best show of all time in exposition, and in my opinion, like the best show, whatever period, is The Wonder Years, because you get to like watch these old like family footage of the protagonist, like with the protagonist of the protagonist. Like he's older now in real time, but he's the narrator, and he's giving you these little, you know, like secret little bits of wisdom and kind of inside, you know, nuggets of information to make that scene better, to make it more meaningful, to make it more interesting, and to give you context so you can appreciate the like family vids. And because they do that, the actual show itself, the conversations, the dialogue, the story, the character development feels real, right? Because they're not forced to squeeze in, just push in like overbearing exposition into the dialogue, right? They just have normal, natural human being conversations, and so you believe them. If you were to watch it without the sort of commentary by the narrator, those characters with their sort of awkward, sullen, withdrawn pauses are exactly like everyone you grew up with. I mean, it totally works. But having the narrator take those pauses and convert them into something meaningful, that's the true magic. I mean, that's Fitzgerald level stuff. But okay, so that's what this one is about. We're going to talk about exposition, and let me read. And I have some more stuff I want to say, but I have stuff I want to show you, so I'll do that at the end. So bear with me while I find the share screen button. So let's do number 60. Saturday, October 21st, 2023, writing advice from the Wesley Willis Entourage. Hi, everyone. When I was in elementary school, I learned about the tallest building in the world, the Sears Tower. That's what it was called back then, when it was the king of all skyscrapers. In 2009, while it was still the tallest building in the US, it was renamed in honor of Chicago musical legend Wesley Willis. I moved to Chicago in 2014, Noble Square. I went on a walk every day, usually around Eckhart Park. From the east side, I would always look out at the downtown skyline and see the town and think of rock and roll McDonald's. On one of my walks, I skipped the park and I went to the tower itself, and I learned a little about it. The entire footprint was dug 50 feet deep, and the caissons, or whatever they are, went another 50 feet from there. I was told that 100 feet of foundation was necessary if you're going to build more than 100 stories on top of it. And that sounded reasonable. The architecture of storytelling is similar to the architecture of architecture. Tall tales require deep foundations. But it's not excavation that anchors it into the bedrock, it's exposition. In both cases, however, the bulk, I'm reading this so terribly, I'm sorry. In both cases, however, the bulk of the foundation is invisible to the casual observer. And if it fails, everything it's propping up will collapse. In my experience, that is the fate of most novels, shows, and movies. The visible drama topples for invisible reasons. In other cases, the exposition is executed brilliantly. The Crown is a good example. In every episode, there's an enormous amount of scene to set, a political lesson, a history lesson, a geography lesson, 1,000 facts the audience must know. Every conversation functions as a tutorial, and yet it feels like drama. But for every triumph of this kind, there are a dozen fiascos. Sometimes it's a narrational info dump, like the opening scene of every Star Wars movie, or the opening pages of uncountable fantasy novels. A map on page 1, followed by some thick annals of imaginary history. This is clunky, but I don't mind it. I read the Silmarillion. I get it wrong every time. The Silmarillion, that one. What I do mind is unrealistic conversations like Entourage. In the pilot, the characters' names are stated 143 times. If someone announces your name that much, you're probably in a cult. Similarly cultish exposition is "I know you" introductions, in which one character states a bunch of facts about another character, as in, "I know you, you're Merrill Hess. I was there the day you hit that 507-footer over the left field wall, set the record." Or, "I know you, you're a rich real estate brat living off your trust fund, only dimly aware that an entire world exists outside of the coddled 1%. Those are both real. And I don't hate either of them, but nor am I fond. Far worse is, "Oh, I forgot to tell you," one character says to another, and then explains everything the audience needs to know. Sometimes it begins with a question, "Did you hear about X?" "No, tell me." And then the fact bludgeoning begins. Worst of all, though, is, "As you know," followed by a detailed paragraph. If I already know everything you're saying, why are you saying it? And in such detail. That's a psychopath talking, the type of character I would actively root against in any story. If disclosures of this kind are how you construct your world, everything we know about it should be revealed by the bad guys. It would be a substantial improvement to exposition if the characters just looked into the camera and introduced themselves, like Wesley Willis does in his song, Wesley Willis. "I am a rock soloist. I am a rock singer of the Wesley Willis fiasco. I am a cityscape skyscraper artist. I am a working class dog. Wesley Willis, Wesley Willis, Wesley Willis, Wesley Willis." At least there's integrity and candor of this kind. So if I ever return to Chicago for another Willis Tower tour and find myself trapped in an elevator, I'd much rather be accompanied by Wesley than anyone from Entourage. Okay, that's number 60. So I mentioned 143 acknowledgments of names, statements of people's names. Let me share some more things with you. Let me share my screen with everybody. So here's the pilot from Entourage. I watched it with captions on, and I wrote down every single acknowledgement of a name. Every time someone says a name, I just Vince. Like, I don't care about Vince. I know who Vince is. Stop saying it. There's some names I didn't count, like Pierce Brosnan, something Miss August or. But these are the ones that I counted. 143 names in the pilot, the first episode. And then Cheers is a kind of effective pilot. People talk about the Tina Fey talked about Cheers, loved Cheers in Bossy Pants. And so I did Cheers. Cheers was actually the first one I did this too, before I did Entourage and noticed how bad that was. But Cheers has 81, counting Coach. Coach is effectively a name, like the little kid's ID, this is like, Walker Keller. I didn't include that, or like references to sports figures. Sam, the bartender, is an old baseball player, and they talk about sports figures. 81 in the pilot, it's okay. It's like quite a bit. You watch Cheers and you notice that it's actually a lot that they repeat it. Now here is DuckTales. There's quite a few. It's 84 or 74. It depends if you count Beagle Boys. So here's all the ones that I counted. And there's an argument of whether because the Beagle Boys have actual names. There's one instance and when it says Louis in the captions, but it's Huey. But like Burger, they're actual names of them. And so the Beagle Boys is just a collective noun for them. So 74 or 84, somewhere around there. It's in the Cheers range. But let's pull up Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones had 79. I counted Rob, but here's everything I counted. And there's where Winter is coming, makes an appearance. And Winter is coming, and Winter is coming. And but like Rob Boy, I counted it, but I didn't actually hear it, right? You see it in the captions, but I didn't hear it. Turn up the volume and watch that scene like 3 times. It was sort of gibberish. But 79, but what I didn't count was Dothraki and Wildlings and Night's Watch and White Walkers. Those are collective nouns. Those are collections of people, but the people within that group have individual names. And so I didn't count them. And so that's the Beagle Boy argument. So let's say DuckTales is 74, Game of Thrones is 79. That's not, and Game of Thrones is long, right? DuckTales is short. So those aren't bad figures, but we can do better. We can do whatever. We can keep going. Here's The Office. Okay, like the American version, not the like the ethnic Office, not the whatever. This is the yeah, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Now Pam is on there a lot because Michael's like Pam, 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 in that first episode. He's just this rapid fire Pam acknowledgement. But there's only 58. There's people I didn't like. Hitler, like I didn't get like, and like Hillary Clinton and the Stooges, and there's a phone call. There's this arbitrary phone call. Abe Lincoln and Bono, right? I didn't include any of those people in it. We have one more to go. I think you can guess. I think you can guess what this one is based on a show I was talking about in the, before I started this, before I read it. Best, I hope. The Wonder Years. Okay, so here's the list of the wonders. It's 53. There's only 53 of them, and like these people don't matter, whatever, but you include them because they're clearly stated. I didn't include dad, mom, brother, sister, Robert F. Kennedy, or Charles Manson. I didn't include them, but everybody else is 53. So the Wonder Years, again, what makes that show work for me is the exposition, the narrator. It made it feel so natural in the way people were able to communicate because you didn't need to info dump in conversation. Okay, that's all I have. I hope your world is disclosed to you in enjoyable ways, or at least you don't notice the crassness of it. Okay, bye.